what happened with our Sky News colleague Cheng Lei. I mean, it was not so much questions. You don't get any questions to a Chinese Premier, not on this visit anyway, but just the blocking of even that image of having her being seen with the Premiers, what happened with those Chinese officials. The Prime Minister was asked about this. He said, I wasn't across it, haven't been told about it. And the Coalition said, that's not really believable. You've got 11 media staff. They either did tell you or they should have told you, and you need to make a comment on that. It's happened here in our parliament. What side do you fall on with those two explanations?
Well, I think there's a trend, isn't there, in politics with some politicians having a kind of learned helplessness. I didn't know, I didn't hear, I was kept in a cocoon, no one told me. I mean, it just strains credibility. If it is a lack of knowledge, well, then it's a deliberate, intentional lack of knowledge, and I don't think it does anyone any credit when that happens.
So it would have been better to just address it, mention that's not how we do it here.
You're in a position of... You're in a position of political leadership to show political leadership and to answer questions like that and answer them frankly. And if you think somebody made a mistake and tried to exclude someone from an event for political reasons, then you should just own it, say it was wrong, and say it should never happen again on your watch. And just pretending you don't know about it or consciously not finding out about it just makes you look like you stand for nothing.
The Prime Minister commented on the military incidents that have happened between the two, some of the concerning incidents where ADF personnel felt they were deliberately targeted. He said he wants to improve military-to-military communication. No one would, I guess, disagree with wanting to improve it, but does it attempt to sort of explain it away as an accident when most analysts seem to think it wasn't?
Well, I think doing whatever we can to de-escalate conflict and potential military conflict between Australia and China, I think everybody would say is in our mutual interests. And so improving lines of communication, opening up lines of communication, and if that's a way of preventing these kinds of incidents from happening again, well, I think that's absolutely worthwhile doing. I think, robustly expressing our national views on these things and not backing back from that also needs to be part of the communication. But, as best we can, we should be de-escalating the language, de-escalating the conflict with China. And I've got to say, I think both the Coalition and Labor have been trying to escalate the language and escalate the tensions with China. Projects like AUKUS and nuclear submarines that are clearly targeted at China are part of the escalation problem, and we should acknowledge that our actions how our actions are going to be viewed from countries in our region. And when we're aggressively trying to arm ourselves in order to confront China, we should acknowledge that our actions also feed into this.
Labor is attempting to have legislation passed which would allow it, if it wanted to have effective travel bans on countries that didn't accept its citizens that Australia seeks to deport, for example, if they commit serious crimes. This is being painted as something that, protects our sovereignty. Is that fair enough? I mean, if countries just simply say no to that, that's not a workable situation, is it?
Yeah. This is rubbish and amateur legislation. If you remember, the Labor Party tried to ram it through Parliament in less than 48 hours. They wanted us to vote on it while it was still warm from the photocopier. The idea that whatever Andrew Giles puts in terms of immigration determinations is going to somehow change Vladimir Putin's view on receiving unwelcome dissidents being returned, or the regime in Iran's going to change its policy on receiving returned dissidents because Andrew Giles changes Australia's immigration policy. It's laughable, but that's what Labor is pretending they'll get out of this legislation.
Have pause for thought, though.
Well, you name them. I can't imagine what countries are seriously... If you've got a repressive, nasty regime that doesn't care about the interests of its own people, it's hardly going to be persuaded to change its policies because Australia is mean to them as well. I mean, it's actually it's an incredibly amateur effort. But, I mean, I've been out talking with diaspora communities here in Melbourne and multicultural Australia. They are ropeable with Labor. They're seeing this legislation as yet another breach of trust. And they're asking themselves, at the end of the day, what's the difference between a Labor government and a coalition government if Labor's willing to do these new, untested forms of cruelty against multicultural Australia?